were doubling the crops and the land that they were already farming. So they were having more growing seasons. They were trying to stack it up as much as they can to try and lead to more food in the future. What else were they doing? Yeah.
Did they start using like pesticides?
Okay.
Keep the crops healthy?
Yeah, they were trying to use pesticides and trying to use things that would help them to last longer.
Oh, they take the seeds from like the best like plants that produce like the most like food and stuff, and they use those seeds.
Okay. They'd use seeds from the best plants. They were trying to modify. They were trying to, you could say, genetically modify plants. Make sure that they were creating ones in the future that would be better. They'd be able to like grow more food, ones that would be like more nutritious. All right. Anything else? Okay. Let's go ahead and look at the next question. We looked yesterday at Trump's taxes. What did we learn from Trump's taxes from 1985 to 1994? Yeah.
He paid $1 billion in that time.
So he lost $1 billion. So he lost $1 billion total. All of his businesses. Not like he paid that much in taxes. They indicated he didn't pay any taxes in 8 out of those 10 years. But just as far as like losing, like his businesses lost that amount. So there were a lot of years where they didn't make any profit. They actually lost a lot of money. Okay. Anything else with that? Okay, so again, that begs the question, it's like, was Trump an incompetent businessman, possibly, or could he have been doing that on purpose to try and save money from taxes? There was one news reporter yesterday that I watched who is in favor of Trump. They generally report very positively about Trump on this news station. But this reporter said, it shows and proves that he's an even bigger genius than we thought, because he was able to avoid paying taxes for all of those years. Others might say, for one, that could be dishonest, and for two, it could just show that he's not as successful of a businessman as we thought. So, yeah.
I feel like if you're losing money in the process of like trying to get out of your taxes, like it's kind of a sacrifice. So like, it's really
Okay.
not bad.
All right. And on this topic, so I watched this podcast the other day, and the host of it said something I wanted to share with you. He talked about how people often are married to their beliefs. What he means by that is that when people have opinions, when they come to conclusions, they almost identify with that. They come to feel that that's part of who they are. And he was arguing, you shouldn't be married to your beliefs. You should be willing to basically adapt when you learn new information, if that information is reliable, if it's objective, if it's accurate. It wasn't him saying this, but I'll go ahead and say this. You should be more focused on just seeking truth than on forming an opinion and then doing everything you can to defend that opinion. That way, as you learn more information over the future, you're going to be more willing to change your viewpoint based on that new information. I'll say in the last 10 years, I have changed my views on a variety of topics, trying to have that mindset of being open to what statistics say, what science says, to whatever new valid information you can find. Okay, current events. What do we know that's happened in the last day or so? Yeah, Ashton.
I was going to ask you a question on that first topic real fast. Would you say the podcasts you listen to change your mind often, or do you just listen to them just to see what other people think?
The podcast?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say the podcast necessarily has changed my mind often. I haven't even been listening to this podcast for probably more than a month or so. I mean, I kind of developed that mindset like as I was starting college of like just be open to the new information that you find. Try not to be defensive if it goes against your other beliefs or your opinions. So it's this idea in psychology that they call confirmation bias. And if you don't understand it, it might be harder to overcome it. But a lot of people, whenever they learn new information, if it already confirms their beliefs, they like it and they embrace it. But if it goes against their beliefs, they reject it. They try and disprove it and find out why it's wrong. They don't objectively go into it trying to just gain new information. It's more like they already have decided on their beliefs and they're just looking to defend those beliefs. Yes?
Home apartment fire killed a family of 6, and just in January, some inspectors tested it for a smoke alarm and carbon monoxide detector, and it tested positive, so it was working, but then they couldn't find
did you say this was?
Harlem is an apartment.
Harlem, okay. Gotcha. I wanted to show you with the Colorado shooting, I think that they're doing the right thing on this, highlighting the victim who gave his life for the other students. This was an 18-year-old student at the school in Colorado who lunged at the shooter. And so this gave other students the ability to escape the room, and there were 3 other students that once he lunged at the shooter that also helped him and tackled the shooter. And so even though you had people that were injured and this guy died, a lot less people died potentially because of his actions. So this was at a STEM high school, and there was a student in another class who highlighted that he's actually met this person in real life. He had gone to a robotics competition, but this is the guy right here. His name's Kendrick Castillo. And oftentimes when you have shootings, there's a big emphasis on the actual shooter. There's a big emphasis on them and their life. And make the case, that's not really the best thing. If you have someone that's really depressed, that's thought about doing something like this, and then they see that someone got a lot of attention and a lot of fame from their acts, it could potentially make them more likely to do the same thing. But highlighting the actual victim, that is the better thing to do, especially someone like this. Highlighting this type of behavior will make others more willing to do that and to try and put their lives on the line to protect others. But a few things I wanted to read from this. This is just a quote from his dad. It said, "I know that because of what he did, others are alive, and I thank God for that. I love him, and he is a hero, and he always will be. He just loved people that much." And so it explains how he was in a British literature class at his high school, and he was sitting next to a student that pulled out a gun and told everyone to remain where they are and not to move. Then he lunged at the shooter. 3 other students also attacked the shooter. And it highlights that the people in his class were members of his robotics team. He viewed them as family, and so that was partly why he was willing to put his life on the line for him. Highlights that he spoke English and Spanish, attended a Catholic school. He viewed his grandfather as a hero, and his grandfather died, and he kept the flag that was draped over his grandfather's casket. Talked about how he was a patriotic individual. His family was Hispanic, and they had Spanish roots, but they also loved America and viewed themselves as Americans. Talks about how there were students that tried to stop the bleeding by applying pressure to his chest. And some of the main thoughts from his parents. He's an only child, so that's even sadder, the fact that his parents would be going to their home with just those 2. They're not going to have other kids there. And so it's hard no matter what if you lose a kid, but in that circumstance it makes it worse, you could argue. But a message that they wanted to get out is they said that as they're mourning their son, that they want Kendrick's classmates, their son's classmates, to heal, to go to college, get married, start their own family surrounded by love. Any thoughts or questions with that?
Sad.
Yeah, it definitely is sad. But again, I'm glad that they're highlighting him and putting a lot of emphasis on him and his life instead of the shooters in this situation. Okay, moving on to some politics. Talked about William Barr and House Judiciary Committee. They voted to hold him in contempt of Congress. And so that passed in committee meeting, and now that is going to go to the House floor for a vote. And that's partly because he refused to turn over the unredacted version of the Mueller report. That highlights that they asked for it before Trump tried to invoke executive privilege over it. Then it just talks about how some politicians are calling this a constitutional crisis right now. Now there's other media personalities are referring to it more as a constitutional confrontation. And then I wanted to show you, since we talked about Utah being the scam capital of the United States last week, this is just highlighting that idea. There's a business in Salt Lake called Russ Rarecoin that basically found out to be a Ponzi scheme. you've had investors in total cheated out of $200 million. This is highlighting some of the specifics. People believe that they were pulling their money in to buy and sell silver, but the funds were actually being used to pay former investors. So again, that's what a Ponzi scheme is. Like, you have someone that starts this idea, like they start this business and they say, hey, like, you're investing in such and such product, gonna make a lot of money. People start giving them money, and then they basically take that money, they give some of it to themselves, and they get other investors, and they start taking money and just like basically moving it around. So investors are getting some money back, and it just convinces them to keep giving more and more over time. Talks about all these businesses that they own, and they're probably just moving money in and out of all of them. Talks about how they made donations to school music programs with some of that money, and it highlights that some of the people that have lost money with them, they were members of the same church in Utah. So sometimes people feel that they can trust the same individuals that they're going to church with every week. That can lead people to feel like, oh, these are good people. They have to be good people if they're going to my church. I trust them. And it can make people a little bit naive and willing to give people money without doing a lot of like background investigation. Okay. Thoughts or questions with that? Go ahead and pull out your Nepal worksheet that you started yesterday. We'll keep working on that for a little bit, and then we'll answer it as a class.